session in which we are looking at a practice in probably any of the tax or regulatory areas where we are looking at what is the objective of the client. A client would like to avoid disputes to the extent possible, because in India disputes are costly to resolve, they take a long period of time, they could also end up in unnecessary demands, compulsory payments of taxes, whether they are due or not, and therefore we thought that we would look at the topic of avoiding disputes. This particular presentation will look at understanding the basic causes of dispute and possibly the ways to mitigate those type of disputes where there is communication by us, oral communication either by us or by the revenue authorities, how we can handle them, the visits when we go to the department, tax department, regulatory department, and how we are supposed to behave, what types of communication can be there, written communication from the department, and which are the best practices to manage at the time of search, seizure, summons. In the indirect taxes at least, there are audits done by the revenue and these are causes of concern. So how could we look at the best practices before an audit, during an audit, and after an audit? This would be the coverage today. Let's look at the causes. The main causes of a dispute could be lack of clarity of the law, provisions could include rules, notifications, frequent amendments in the law also are a cause of large amount of disputes. That is the lack of knowledge itself. To mitigate this, one could have regular updates. Today you have a lot of online resources in every tax law where you could get information on what are the updates. You could also subscribe to some of them which will automatically alert you about what is happening. It could also alert you on various articles which have been written on that. It depends on what is the subscription you take. You could also get trained, like this is one of the training, but you could get trained in the knowledge of the law itself. Complicated issues which arise during the course of business, trade, providing of service, you could ensure that all the communication which you have is in writing, either in the form of a written opinion, in the form of a note. It could also be in the form of email, confirmation. One more very important aspect of mitigating this type of clarity in law is to write to the department itself. I am not talking about calling up department and finding out what is the solution. Rather, I am looking at writing to them about our state of affairs, our understanding of the particular subject, our understanding of the issues, why we are paying, how we are valuing the particular activity such as manufacture or service, and seek a confirmation from the department. We write to them what all we are doing and the reasons therefore, and tell them that we wish to comply with the law, kindly confirm our understanding. The next issue which could be there is the department is yet to explore the loopholes in the law and provision. What do we understand by loopholes? In this context, loopholes are gaps which are there. A particular transaction is there and it can be interpreted in maybe 2 or 3 ways. Clarity on that interpretation is not there. And this particular issue is very much there in indirect taxes, and those areas where clarity is not there are the areas where different interpretations are taken. Within the department, within the revenue department itself, from place to place, there could be differences. For example, in Hyderabad, there is a view taken by the Service Tax Commissionerate. Bangalore takes a different view. Within the Commissionerate itself also, there could be different views. Commissioner is taking a view, Deputy Commissioner takes another view, the audit party is taking a different view, the officer who is a jurisdictional officer has another view. This also could be an issue, and for this particular issue, this could be a cause of the dispute. Therefore, again, the way of resolving this could be by clarifying in writing, asking for clarification in writing. Now, one question which is generally asked is, we will ask for clarification, but will we get the clarification? You may not get the clarification in majority of cases, or even if the clarification comes, it may come orally rather than in writing. So then what is one expected to do? If there is no clarification, maybe a reminder letter saying that we are going to follow this system and we are still to receive a clarification from your side or a confirmation from your side as to what we think is the position of law. This is an activity or a methodology which would avoid some future disputes in the form of longer period. What is this longer period? A dispute in central excise, if it is a bona fide dispute, SSC had made a bona fide error, then it can be, the tax can be demanded, duty can be demanded only for a year. Under service tax, it is for 1.5 years if there is a bona fide error. Beyond that, the department cannot make a demand at all, as long as our bona fide is on record. And that is why we said we should send it to them in writing. When we send it to them in writing, ideally either it should be a registered post or a speed post, where an acknowledgement also can be downloaded and attached to the document which you are sending to the department. There is hardly any importance or use of getting into an oral dialogue or argument with the revenue authorities. They have a view. If we are acceptable to that view, we follow it. If it is not acceptable, again we write back to them saying this view is not correct because of the following reasons as per us, and seek further clarification. Sometimes issues are not only related to us, it is related to the entire industry. In such cases, these issues can be escalated through the association rather than by the individual SSC or taxpayer. This could be methods of resolving the issue about lack of clarity in the law, lack of clarity in the officers, where there are different interpretations possible. Further, there could also be a change in the thought process due to a decision of the Supreme Court or the local High Court. Now, in such cases, also it changes the entire liability. What could happen is, say a particular type of activity, example I would take of this under service tax is of reimbursement. Now, reimbursement is some amount which is incurred by the service provider, which was the obligation of the service receiver, and the service receiver asks you to incur it. For example, travel, hotel, conveyance, these type of expenses, the service receiver says that you can get a reimbursement from me. For that there are rules. There is a rule 5.1 and there is a rule 5.2. In case of reimbursement, there have been many changes. In the initial stages, prior to 2006, reimbursements were not being questioned at all. However, this was also misused by certain SSEs in trying to shift the value of the service into the reimbursement. This is not legal. And then the valuation rules came, in which they said any costs incurred or expenditure incurred while providing a service should be added to the service. Now, whether it is a part of the service or not, the reimbursement was a question of interpretation. So this went up in dispute, and at the Delhi High Court it was held that the provision itself of trying to add a cost to the value of service, cost of reimbursement to the value of service, was quashed. That is, Rule 5.1 was quashed itself. However, there was also an exception rule called 5.2. Now this 5.2 sets out in which cases or exceptions the deduction for reimbursements can be taken. This rule has not been quashed. In this budget, 2015 budget, they have looked at adding the value of reimbursements to the value of consideration itself. This is the change which has been made. However, they have also mentioned that new rules will be prescribed, which till date has not been prescribed. Now these are areas of lot of grey. So how does one tackle this? This one could tackle by ensuring that you write to the department again. So the intimation to the department of a change in the rule and the impact on you, and seeking their clarification on the way you are taking it forward, because you can't stop your business just because the laws are changing. You can't stop your service providing activity just because the law has changed. But you have to comply with the law also. And therefore, in such cases, maybe we have to ensure that intimation to department on our understanding is made clear. This could happen even due to a Supreme Court decision. For example, in the area of construction of residential apartments, there was a thought process that a single agreement is not liable under service tax at all. That is, when I sell a immovable property, instead of having a construction agreement, I have only a sale of immovable property, there is no liability at all. This was questioned under VAT in 2005 in Karnataka. The Karnataka High Court held that even such contracts are works contract and they would be a liability on the value of goods transferred. The Supreme Court in L&T decision, in which K. Raheja also was part of that decision, specifically said that there is a works contract even in a single agreement. So therefore, this became the law of the land. And subsequent to this, whether you have a single agreement, double agreement, you still are liable to tax on the portion of works contract which is outstanding as on the day when the buyer comes to you. This also brought in one more aspect. How do I have an agreement with a buyer when he comes to me? At that point or on that day, what is the percentage of completion of that project? What portion has already become an immovable property would not be subjected to VAT. So there is a change in the law. Now this change in the law, whether it is accepted by department, it may take 5 years or 10 years for the department to accept finally. But till then, what one has to do? Therefore again, one has to intimate and tell them that based on this particular judgment, this is the way we are going forward. In this time of changing laws, changing rates, changing taxes, how can one safeguard them oneself? That is, how can the contractor or the builder or the developer safeguard himself? In his clause, in his agreement, he could have a clause that whenever new taxes come, the differential tax would have to be paid extra. For example, if GST comes, then obviously the rate of GST would be different from the obvious rate of VAT which is applicable today. Not only VAT for a building contract, even service tax is applicable. So the combined tax of service tax and VAT still could be less than the GST rate. Therefore, the differential tax which is payable, there should be a clause in the agreement itself. With GST expected to come by 2017, any contracts which are likely to go beyond a period of 1 year should have this clause in place. Sometimes the disputes happen because the SSE hesitates to communicate with the department. They feel that they will be pointed out, they would be picked out, and this causes some hesitation. The attitude of some of the officers in the revenue department also is not very helpful, though there are some exemplary officers also in the indirect tax departments. There could be a communication gap also. The department officer may say, oh, you are doing this government contract, it is not liable to tax at all, don't worry about it. But this is not in writing. And therefore, at a future date, if the demand is made for the same transaction, there is no evidence to back it up and say that this was the advice which we got from the revenue department itself. Sometimes consultants can fill this gap. Now again, in consultants, what is probably required is that it cannot be just a phone call asking them, is this liable or not liable? Consultant may be traveling, he may not be accessible to the books. You may ask him for a simple answer and he gives you a simple answer without looking at all the conditions for that answer, the assumptions which are going behind that answer. And therefore, again, even with consultants or chartered accountants, it is always better to have a confirmation of the understanding of the question and the answer. It could be in writing only, or at least, if that is not possible, by way of an email. Now you go to the department and he has told you that it's not liable. Then it may be a good idea to make a detailed letter of what you asked, attach the agreement which you are seeking to get clarification on, and say that this is the answer which you have received and therefore you would not be paying any tax anymore on this transaction. This is something which can also be done. There should be no gaps in the communication. Large number of problems we find is because of a gap in the communication. There is also no uniformity, as I said, between commissionerates, within commissionerates. Change in management also can cause problem. The officer who is in charge of indirect tax may not be up to date, and it is leading to an issue whereby there is a change in the thought process happening in between. Maybe for this, within the company, what could be done is a standard operating procedure, simple procedure without getting into too much of detail is in place for indirect taxes. Proper qualified persons should be in charge. They say that the best method of internal control is to have a qualified and competent person depending on the nature and size of the business. If the size of the business is less, then you may not be able to afford a qualified person, but at least he should be an experienced person. Or you should have an experienced person who can be consulted in these cases. You should also have sufficient manpower. Not keeping accounts, not updating the invoices, keeping everything for the year end invariably is going to result in lot of mistakes, errors, though they may be unintended, and you would end up paying taxes also. More importantly, you may not recover the taxes. In indirect taxes, the recovery of the tax is very important because you are just an agent. You collect and pay. And when you collect and pay, you also do not pay tax on taxes already paid which are eligible for set-off. So this is very important, sufficient manpower. Sometimes there are changes. Gone are those days when an employee joined a company and would be with them through his lifetime. Now people could be expected to leave in a year or two, and therefore there is a requirement for proper handing over process to be there in every company. The person leaving and the person joining should have a common period of 1 month in which takeover happens properly. Especially in indirect taxes, this is very important. Another way of mitigating these type of issues which can come up is to have a proper filing system. In most enterprises for indirect tax, the files will be incomplete. Even the letters sent to department copies are not available. The proof of having sent it is not available. Letters from the department are not filed properly. and therefore a chronological master file of all correspondence with each department may be kept. And if there are many disputes, then even for each dispute a separate file could be there, because there would be a lot of information which has been shared with the department, and the fact that you know what you have shared with the department, which is already available with them, could be an advantage for you when you deal with any dispute. So it should be indexed and numbered. Files should be indexed and numbered. There should also be a responsibility fixed. Many times in many companies, even medium sector companies with 50, 100 crore, there is hardly any responsibility fixation. There is one officer who is responsible for everything. He may have an assistant who will do the running around. This type of organizational structure could possibly lead to a lot of difficulty, and when the difficulty becomes too much, the responsible officer may leave the job and go somewhere else. That would cause untold misery to this particular client. Even while hiring, there is a challenge, because you don't have many people who are knowledgeable. So therefore though the objective is to find the right man for the right job, you may find a man but he may not be right. Then there has to be some sort of a system by which that person gets trained to that extent so as to mitigate this particular issue. This is a major issue, and in my view, I see it happening every 2-3 years in every company, and therefore it is required. Sometimes, due to choosing an easy way out, there could be incorrect information given to the department, for which documentation also may be provided. This can be catastrophic. We have to ensure that at no point of time wrong information is given to the department. The reason for this is, once I give a wrong impression to the department, then the clause on misrepresentation can be invoked. The clause on suppression can be invoked. The clause on intent to evade duty can be invoked. And once these clauses are invoked, then the demand could go to an extent of 5 years in indirect taxes, which are central, like excise or customs or service tax, and in state laws it could be even 8 years. Therefore, this is very important not to give incorrect information, and if at all the incorrect information has been given, at the earliest point this should be rectified by sending another note. Sometimes what happens is the department comes and takes a statement, that in that statement some mistakes are made by the employee on his own, or even as per the dictation of the department itself. The departmental officer may dictate, you may write and sign and go away. This is also a very dangerous thing to do, because any statement which is under oath is admissible as evidence and can be used against the SSE. In this case also, if there is any mistake made, a competent person should revert by saying that this is the real state of affairs, and this is the background, this is what I said, but this is not correct, or this is what I said, this is the understanding which I have, however that was not what was recorded. For this you may have to get the copy of the summons and the recording itself. This you should specifically ask for. If you are not able to get it, department says we will give it along with the notice, this indicates a predetermined mind. They have already decided that you are guilty. It's not the right way to look at it at all by revenue officers. They should give you a copy of the statement in normal course. If they don't, then you are expected to come back and make a remembrance copy, you could call. Whatever you remember, you write down. There may be some vital questions asked and answers provided which have not been recorded, which could help you in your defense. These things should be communicated again by way of a separate letter. Sometimes the books of accounts of the SSE are not true or fair as far as indirect tax is concerned. Otherwise, everything might be recorded. The sales has been recorded properly, purchases, credits, to some extent there may be some mistakes, ineligible credits have been taken, reverse charge liabilities have not been paid, there could be n number of errors. For this, professionals could look at common errors in each of the indirect tax areas. For example, common errors in excise, common errors in VAT, common errors in service tax. These are all available in many commentaries, as well as you may get something on Google also. In this case, what are the mitigation factors which could be there? The mitigation for companies who are interested in ensuring compliance would be to get a due diligence done of indirect taxes. It should be noted that the internal audit which is done in most companies does not have the scope of IDT covered, or the internal auditors are not very knowledgeable in indirect tax. If the internal auditors are already covering and if they are very knowledgeable in indirect tax, then you don't have a problem. But if they are not, then maybe a specific area audit has to be done. Why this should be done? In any company, the total turnover of the company may be 100 crores. And in that company, if it is a service company, the indirect tax impact could be around 15 to 20%. And if it is a manufacturing company, it could be 25 to 30%. So there is a large impact. It should be covered in the scope of internal audit. One more aspect which could be very important is that normally in most companies, the indirect tax aspects are not escalated to the top management. The board of directors get many reports, but they do not get any report on indirect tax. So this also could be something which can be built in. The MIS of the company can have the indirect tax aspects also covered. For example, as compared to the last 3 years, a comparative figure of what is the net tax cost. What is the net tax cost? The rate will be X, you would have already paid Y, X minus Y is the net amount, percentage of that as a percentage of the top line. This would probably be a very good indicator. One more MIS which could be escalated and be available for the board of directors could be the percentage of credit. Because credit, if I take less credit, I am adding costs. And if I have not taken say 1% or 1.5% credit, this 1.5% directly hits the bottom line of the company. In these times, when the net profit of a company may not exceed 7 or 8%, 1.5% could make a lot of difference. And therefore, a credit reporting system also could be there. In addition, there could be some more. But these are mitigating factors so that the focus is on that. For example, one more aspect which could be there is reconciliation between what has been disclosed in the returns versus what is there in the financials. This reconciliation could be done on a quarterly basis and certainly to be done on a yearly basis. Even statutory auditors would do well to ensure this is there. Otherwise, how can they state that it is true and fair? If 3% is the mistake which is done in indirect taxes of the turnover of 100 crores, that is 3 crores. And the net profit of the company may be only 1 crore. Then actually you should have reported a loss of 2 crores, but you have reported a profit of 1 crore as true and fair. So these type of errors can be avoided by statutory auditors or internal auditors where reconciliation is done regularly. Sometimes due to paucity of time, due to things not being ready, due to information not having been collected, not collated, duplication, one Excel sheet left out, there could be mistakes in the return itself. These type of mistakes should be rectified as soon as possible. Under service tax, you have a 90 days period to revise your return. In VAT returns throughout India, I think a 6-month period is provided to revise the VAT returns. In excise, there is no provision for rectifying the returns. However, if there is a mistake, you should send a registered post letter along with the correct return so that you are able to establish tomorrow that you are not having any malefides. This is very important. The importance, the disclosure, therefore, is the underlying feature of this dispute avoidance methodology and at various points of time. Sometimes the department writes to the SSE and the SSE writes back to them not giving much information. or not giving relevant information, does not provide relevant copies of documents. These also could be a cause of concern and lead to a lot of disputes. The department may even come to a view that the SSE is not cooperating and start writing to the customers of the SSE, which can even kill the business itself. Writing to the customers of the SSE should be a last resort of the department. Unfortunately today, some officers use this as a threat. They say, we will arrest you, we will close your factory, we will write to your customers, and even if something is arguable, they force the SSE to reverse the duty credit or the duty as payable as per the department, which may or may not be correct. If it is to be paid, then there is no problem. If it is not to be paid, then it's a big exercise to get back the money. Therefore, department may even issue a show cause notice because adequate information has not been given. They may say many times, today somebody had called from Cochin who said that the officer is saying that show cause notice is ready and show cause notice is going to be issued. When I asked the SSE has communicated that till now not even a piece of paper has come. Everything has been on the phone, and SSE has given a lot of information, and that person says show cause notice is ready. Now in such circumstances, what can the SSE do? In such circumstances, SSE has to put all the oral correspondence on record and also give his justification. In this case, the issue was that the department felt that there is a liability for the canteen contractor. The company is a 1,000-man company where statutorily canteen has to be there. There are several tribunal decisions which have said that this type of a canteen service is falling under the mega exemption, 19 or 19A serial number. Either of them, I don't know, one of them it is. So it's very clearly mentioned in the mega notification. However, the revenue officer is not agreeable. Therefore, what can the SSE do? He should extract these two provisions or whichever is relevant. Along with the case law, if he sends it, he can mitigate the show cause notice. The dispute itself will disappear. Maybe he should escalate it if there is a show cause notice threat. He should not only reply to the jurisdictional superintendent, maybe mark a copy to the assistant commissioner saying that we do not see why you are saying that you will issue a show cause when there is, the provision is very clear and there is a case law also supporting. Kindly examine this and drop the proceeding. This can be a request which you can make. Therefore, providing of clarification is very, very important for departmental letters. There are SSEs who simply ignore the department letter saying when the problem comes, let us see. By the time it may be too late. You may not be able to rectify and it will be a costly affair, as we have already said. Sometimes periodical notices are issued. There is already a dispute on interpretation. SSE feels he is not liable, department feels he is liable, and continuously every year they are issuing a notice. Now should a cut paste be done all the time? No. Every time there is a notice, there may be some development in the law in the last 1 year which should be added up. To avoid this, in case there is a thinking, there is a changed thinking of the SSE, where he is able to recover this money from his customer, then why should he carry the risk of having repeated show cause notices, which he is not complying with, where interest and penalty also would become part and parcel of his cost. If he can charge it to his customer and customer is willing to avail the credit, then he could pay this under protest. This is a mitigation to the dispute itself. So if he starts paying under protest, show cause notice will not be there. And as and when he wins the case, from then onwards he need not charge at all. He need not pay under protest at all. So this could be very, very important aspect. And sometimes you have delay in filing of returns and payment of taxes. All businesses go through tough times. Sometimes there are genuine issues, margins are not enough. Sometimes it is because funds are getting diverted to some other business or whatever the reason it may be. In such cases, what could happen? Invariably today, computer is playing an important role. Data is mined, how many SSEs are not paying in time, how many SSEs are not filing returns in time, how many of SSEs are not filing return at all. This type of a data is the primary data to go for further investigation. Maybe a preventive visit will be there, maybe the department itself will do more frequent audit so as to identify why this SSE is not paying in time, not filing in time. Therefore, one of the best methods of ensuring not to be highlighted and picked up for such sort of scrutiny is to ensure that you are paying in time, you are filing in time. So that could be a mitigation as far as the delay is concerned. What happens in case of oral communication? This is a big challenge in India because we have seen that tax officers in the indirect tax department unfortunately are not all clean. In fact, the proportion of officers who are you can say in the harassment mode, who set up certain understanding with the clients monthly, yearly, quarterly or every time they visit is unfortunately quite high. When the VAT regime came, this reduced to some extent as far as VAT was concerned. And even in excise, after the reforms in 2000, it got reduced. But unfortunately, it is still a part and parcel of business life today. So what we do, how can we mitigate this oral communication? The department officer may call you 20 times. So you can always write a letter to him. You have called me 20 times and you have asked me this question and I have given you this answer. What more do you want from us? I am also attaching evidence to support my answer. Send it by registered post. Now it's on record that he's been following up and harassing you. If his harassment is too much, try and mark a copy to the higher officer, the assistant commissioner. And if that also is not bearing fruit, maybe you should write to the commissioner. In case this is a case of pure harassment itself, you are convinced that it is only the greed which is running this, then maybe you should mark a copy to the vigilance officer also when you write this particular letter. Therefore, it is very important that when there is a oral communication in your diary, you should write the officer's name and write what is being communicated, what he has asked, what you have told, what are the documents you have provided him, all can be noted. So that in case it doesn't resolve itself, all this can be put into record saying on such and such day you called me, then you called me on such day, you asked me to visit, when I visited this is what happened, everything you put on record and send it to the same officer. It doesn't mean that we should have bad relationship with the officer. We can always have a professional relationship with all officers. There is no need to take panga, as we say in Hindi. We need not fight with the officers because it's of no use. There is absolutely no use in having an ego issue with an officer. Be straight. Ask the officer to give his doubts in writing, especially when you are writing back to him. Always ask him to put in writing. And invariably, if he has to put something in writing, he has to be sure what he is telling. And therefore, you will find 90% of all the oral queries disappear when you seek it in writing. This is a practical aspect which many of you must have been already using. As I said, in case of oral question which you have replied, please ensure that it is replied in writing. Avoid unnecessary meeting today because meetings cost time, cost money to travel, you will have to go through traffic which is getting worse, especially in the metros. And the last and most important, why are you looking at antagonizing somebody? When you don't agree with the officer, he may get angry because his ego is normally very inflated. And therefore, it's better to avoid face-to-face meetings to the extent it is not necessary. This is very important when you look at oral communication. Let us look at visits to and by the department. Sometimes we can avoid visit to the department where the post can work. The registered post, acknowledgement due and speed post are a valid method of communication and service as per the law itself. Under every law this is allowed and recognized. Don't send it by courier, maybe you can also send by hand if the dispatch section of these particular departments are working. It can go through an office boy who will just go get a acknowledgement and get back. If acknowledgements are not given, then it can be sent by registered post with a small comment in the bottom of that acknowledgement was not given, therefore being sent by speed post. And this should be kept in record. Whatever communication you are sending, don't have blank letters without signature. Let it be a full-fledged document along with the proof of having reached the officer. In most departments there is a register for entering. So if I go to a department, I can ask for a register to be given for recording why I have come. If this register is not there or not maintained, maybe in your letter which you send to them, this can be one of the points, that when I visited you, there was no register available for me to enter the time and purpose. Maybe that register will be there next time you go. Otherwise also it's a good document for defense. When you meet the officer, only meet the concerned officer. Don't meet officers who are not concerned. Officer may not be in his seat, you might have to wait. These are issues when you go to meet. Discuss the purpose of the meeting and be very straight and tell him that you are going to write a letter back to him of what is being discussed, so that everything is on record and there is nothing left for us to imagine, I said this, you said this, none of which has evidence. After the visit, after I visit the department, come back, I can always make a very nice polite letter telling the officer, thank you for the time provided and all that, guidance provided, these were the questions asked, these were the answers given, and therefore we are going to go ahead and do this. Even if you are not agreeing with the officer, such disagreement also can be put in such a letter. This is a very important aspect. Again, you should send it by registered post or speed post. There is no point in going and having arguments with officer, I would like to reiterate. Sometimes letters from department come. What happens if a department officer visits you? Even if the department officer visits you, do the same thing. When the department officer visits you, ask him if he has come with an authorization. Sometimes they get angry. But that is their job. They are supposed to provide you the proof why they are coming. The purpose should be very clear. Sometimes they don't provide, it's all right. Still give them the information. Whatever documents you give them, take an acknowledgement for that. Also communicate after that visit that you had visited us and this is what you had asked and this is what you had said and this is what we said, and we had provided you the following documents in your visit. Make this very, very clear to the officer. Provide only the required information asked by the officer or something which is relevant for your defense. Say he has asked for something and the agreement is very clear. Attach the agreement also when you send this letter post his visit. Letters to and by the department. If any letter comes from the department, you are required to reply. Sometimes they give you 3 days time to reply. Then you should write a letter immediately that 3 days time is not proper. As per the department, when we give you a letter, you are supposed to reply to us within 15 days. Please give us at least 15 days. If you require that time. If you don't require that time, you can always reply and provide all the information which is all readily available. When you are asking for suggestions, the department also may suggest something or demand something. Ask them to give it in writing. Now, when I am talking about the communication from department, they may vaguely tell you that you are not complying with the law. Ask them, what is the provision which I am not complying? There is nothing specific in your letter. Please let us know what we are not complying so that we can reply to you in a proper way. One more issue is, which we have seen happening in the last 4 or 5 years, is that the revenue has become target based. The finance minister probably sets up a target, the CBEC has its own target, and to meet that target the sub targets are there and officers are asked to collect certain amounts. Otherwise there will be dire consequences. This is not a very good method of tax administration. However, it exists in India as of today and therefore it is a reality. There what could happen is, even if the officer is not very convinced that what he is saying is correct, he will try to coerce you, to threaten you, make you pay up the taxes, and then say, if at all there is any merit in what you are saying, you can get a refund. But refunds also don't come in the department, and that could be another exercise in futility sometimes. Sometimes of course refunds do come, but wherever issues are litigatable, interpretational is there, please take an expert opinion in writing again, so that you know where you stand. Don't use only your thought process, maybe take the guidance of somebody who is knowledgeable and a specialist in that area. While I go to a specialist, I should ensure that they are specialists in that area. For example, a chartered accountant may be very good at company law, very good at income tax, but he may not be very good in central excise. So asking him for his opinion would be an incorrect methodology. You should go to somebody and ask an opinion who knows central excise well, or if it is a service tax issue, who knows service tax well, who has been practicing in service tax. Take that from the consultant again in writing, and then only pay. Don't pay unnecessarily, because getting it back, as I said, is difficult. In search and seizures, it is very important that you see the authorization. Is the authorization having a valid number on top? First thing. Otherwise it may be only a way of harassing you. Does it have a number? Has it been signed in original by the JC? Is your address typed out, or is it just handwritten after they come to your place? These are important aspects you may like to see. See that it's properly authorized, and reason why they are searching you also should be sought. However, we cannot stop a government officer. It's not valid in law, and it would be illegal to stop an officer from searching our place. If one were interested, you can look at the Code of Civil Procedures to look at what are the duties of the officer and what are the duties of the taxpayer. It's very important not to do something which is illegal, because that can lead to undesirable results. Provide the adequate support, and in case the officer is saying that he wants to take all your accounts and go, ask him to take some time and take Xerox copies of vital documents so that you can continue the business. No search operation is done to cripple the business. That is not the objective at all, and therefore that time can be taken. Not only that, whatever you are giving, you may insist that everything is recorded. For example, you give a file, sales file, then you should say sales invoices from 176 till 523 are there in this box file. Mention the numbers and give it, because tomorrow if some invoices are missing, they shouldn't blame you, because they are taking those invoices. Sometimes the officers ask for tally backup. Now tally backup has a lot of confidential information which can be used by competitors and others against your business itself. In such cases, the SSE is well within his right to take an NDA from a responsible person. What is an NDA? Non-disclosure agreement from, say, the JC who is signing that authorization. Don't take it from the inspector. There may not be much value to that. When you are after the search, please ensure that you communicate responsibility to the department, saying these were your objections and these are our defenses. We are specifically telling you we didn't pay because of the following reasons. Put it on record, not oral. Many things would have been oral, and department also would have nodded their head and said, yeah, I think you are not liable. If they have said you are not liable, put that also in the report, in that letter which you are sending. You also indicated that you are also in agreement with this, therefore let us know when I can take back the books. Also make a specific request for sample. Let them not take all the documents, because sometimes taking the document itself is a method of coercing payment at an early point of time. As I said, photocopies is possible. The mahazar, which is giving a listing of all the documents which they have taken, has to be issued by the officer. He should not be allowed to take something unofficially, unless of course you have lots of things to hide. But then that part of practice we are not discussing today. follow for release of documents and goods which are seized on record, because even if they have seized goods, you can give a guarantee and get these goods released and continue your business. Your business cannot be crippled because of a doubt that you may not be complying with the law. Summons, very important. When nowadays, unfortunately, summons are issued even without any letter being issued. First, the department is expected to send you a letter to your proper address, not to some improper address. When they can come and send you a summons to the proper address, why the letter cannot come to the proper address? They should first send you a letter seeking information which you could have provided. Summons is not necessary. Summons also on high-ranking officers is not required. There are trade notices which specifically say that the MD of the company, the general manager should not be summarily or routinely summoned when information is available otherwise. This is something which you should know. You can even attach the circular copy when in case they are doing that. See that when you go for a summons, try and see that you give all the evidence which you know. Give only information which you know. If you are saying yes for something, you should be clear that it is yes. If it is somewhat doubtful in your mind, say I am not very sure, can I get back on this? And write to them later saying this is the position after verification I have come to. When they ask for documents, take an acknowledgement. Seek additional time for providing information. Sometimes in the summons, when lot of officers are around you, you may say, okay, I will provide it tomorrow because you want to just get away. This may not be proper. Ask them for adequate time, 15 days time, 20 days time, whatever the time which is necessary to collect. Sometimes they will ask you to reconcile, which means that you might have to hire outside professionals to get it done. Analyze what is expected out of it, what is the direction, and provide some information on that also to the department. Sometimes it's very important that you be prepared in advance. Say you are doing a due diligence already, or your internal audit scope it's already covered. Then the question about a summons being a fearful exercise may not be there. You can provide all the information because everything is available. You can even discuss with your consultant, who should be an expert, as I said, and if it is a reply, a reply should be vetted by the consultant, because they can look at what are the other legal aspects of this. While giving facts also, you can give some legal defense. Don't accept liability at the first instance because the officer shows you some document. That may be irrelevant document, it may be outdated document, it may be a case law against which there are several other contrary case laws, and therefore don't accept liability because you are not an expert in that area. You are not expected to be an expert in that area. Say I will verify, and if it is payable, I will pay the liability. You should ensure that your bona fides are on record. That doesn't mean that I think this is it and please be lenient with it. This is no way to record a statement saying please be lenient with me. When you are saying please be lenient with me, when you are accepting a liability, when you don't know whether you are liable or not, how can you say that please be liberal with me? In case there are surprise questions, be diplomatic, but do not give wrong answers. Do not give any answers which are against the facts. Don't think that I will tell this and the officer will keep quiet. Remember, officer has seen hundreds of cases. He would be knowing whether you are telling the truth or not the truth very soon. In case you have given a statement and something is wrong, please see that you retract it or add to it. That's very important, and as soon as possible. We recommend within 24 hours. Pre-audit is a method by which you can avoid disputes. You get an audit done. Timely returns, verification, reconciliation, intimation to department on issues which are doubtful, which may come through the due diligence report or otherwise. Seek, when the department asks that they are going to do audit, ask them whether they have the power to do audit where there is a little of an issue which is going on. In fact, a little time in the past, there were several judgments which said that service tax audit is not valid in law, and therefore please put that into a record while answering their questions or asking them to come for audit. If somebody asks you that they are going to come for audit, tell them, I don't know whether this audit is legal. Anyway, if you are coming, kindly intimate the dates, not the months, dates, specific dates. They will give you 3 dates. Then after, beyond 3 days, they cannot sit. Sometimes we have seen officers taking 1.5 months. They become employees of the company itself. When they find something, an audit is made into an investigation, and there will be some error or the other is somewhere. Taking that cue, they keep extending the audit, which is not permissible under law. Reply to the audit letters in time, which I have already talked about, and wherever you are agreeable, you have consulted your expert and he says, yes, this is payable, please pay it with interest forthwith. When you pay with interest immediately, you don't have to pay the penalty unless there was a malafide. So that is a very important aspect which can avoid penalties under taxes. Submission of complete information, very important during the audit. If you don't have the information, don't try to bluff. And when you give all this information, it can happen that the frequency of the audit will come down in future. Whatever you are telling the audit team, it's preferable to have it in writing. This may be a little difficult and normally not the routine way in which you handle the departmental audit. But it is our thought process that if you are able to at least put all the major questions and the answers provided and the documents provided in reliance thereof, then you can certainly go for defending yourself in a better manner. Avoid long conversations and arguments. If there is a difference of opinion, there is a difference of opinion. Put in writing why you think you are right and then go ahead. If there is an opinion taken from an expert, you can either show the opinion if it is very clear, or take up the arguments in the opinion and try to convince the officer along with case laws. Sometimes there is an audit note. Now again, audit notes today unfortunately again come in very hazy fashion. There is one email audit note, then there is a audit note without the number or the signature, then there is an audit note with signature without number. So we do not know how many versions of audit note are there. Sometimes the audit note depends on the way you are dealing with them. So therefore, it may be very important that whatever the audit note, if it is not numbered, please mention unnumbered audit note, number so and so, you have mentioned this, and this is what we feel is our defense, and therefore we feel that what you are saying is not correct. We have already provided this, we have shown you this document, still you have put it in the audit note. Mention that. If it is payable, please pay with interest. Submit case laws and legal understandings in writing. Very, very important, because many of the times we are only in oral conversation and the officer simply ignores all our oral conversations. He may or may not agree with the circular, he may or may not agree with the Supreme Court decision. So what is your choice? Your choice is to see that everything is on record. Sometimes you might have to take expert opinion if the stakes are very large, and maybe provide additional reasons why it is not liable. Sometimes credits can be adjusted. You don't have to pay in cash every time. As far as the demand is concerned, always credits can be used. But remember, a credit used also is a loss of money. Credit is like cash. Only thing is, it doesn't affect your bank balance. Sometimes you are not sure, but you have a thought process that it may be liable. In such cases, as we have said earlier, pay under protest. These are some of the thought processes we had on avoiding disputes. We also would urge that you could look at resources for understanding the law. There are lots of online books available. They are available in excise, they are available in service tax. There are a lot of sites